Chapter 21 of Ruth Fielding at the War Front. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Ruth Fielding at the War Front by Alice B. Emerson. A Night to be Remembered. "Come," the French officer whispered. "Now is our chance." "Oh," Ruth murmured, scarcely understanding. "Haste, he will be back in a minute," the officer said. He helped her over the dike, and, stooping, they ran away from the abandoned house from which the puzzled American sentinel thought he had seen a spy flashing a light signal to the enemy lines. "Fortunately, I had a little mirror," murmured Major Marchand, as he and the girl hurried on through the dusk. "With it, you see, I flashed a reflection of the firelight upon the broken panes of that upper window. Our brave young American will discover his mistake before his relief comes. We could not wait for that, nor could we easily explain to his top sergeant why we wished to go forward." "Oh," murmured Ruth again. "In your work, monsieur, I see you have to take chances with both sides." "It is true. Our own friends must not suspect too much about us. The best spy, mademoiselle, plays a lone hand. Come, this way. We must dodge these other sentinels." It was evident that he knew the vicinity well. Beyond the mesa they descended through a grove of big trees, whose tops had been shot off by the German guns. They traveled through the lowlands swiftly but cautiously. Ruth could not see the way, and clung to Major Marchand's hand, but she tried to make no sound. Once he drew her aside into a jungle of brush, and they crouched there, completely hidden, while a file of soldiers marched by, their file leader flashing an electric torch to show the way. "The relief," whispered Major Marchand, when they had gone. "They may be swarming down this hill after us in a few minutes." The two hurried on. The keen feeling of peril and adventure gripped Ruth Fielding's soul. It was not with fear that she trembled now. At length they halted in a pitch-black place, which might have been almost anything but the sheepfold Major Marchand told Ruth it was. He produced an officer's trench whistle and blew a long and peculiar blast on it. "Now hush," he whispered. "It is against usage to use these whistles for anything but the command to go over the top at 0. Necessity, however, mademoiselle, knows no law." They waited. Not a sound answered. There was no stir on any side of them. Ruth's fears seemed quenched entirely. Now a feeling of exultation gripped her. She was fairly into this adventure. It was too late to go back. The major blew the whistle a second time, and in the same way. Suddenly a dark figure loomed before them. There was a word in French spoken out of the darkness. It was not the password the major had given the American sentinel. "Come, mademoiselle," said the major. "Give me your hand again." Ruth's warm hand slipped confidently into his enclosing palm. The Frenchman's courtesy and unfailing gentleness had assured her that she was perfectly safe in his care. They left the sheepfold, the second man, whoever he was, moving ahead to guide them. Even in the open it was now very dark. There was no moon, and the stars were faint and seemed very far away. Finally, Ruth saw that a ridge of land confronted them, but they did not climb its face. Instead, they followed a winding path along its foot, which soon, to the girl's amazement, became a tunnel. It was dimly lit with an electric bulb here and there along its winding length. "Where are we?" she whispered to the major. "This is the first approach trench," he returned. "But silence, mademoiselle. Your voice is not, well, it is not masculine." She understood that she was not to attract attention. A woman in the trenches would indeed create both curiosity and remark. The guide stopped within a few yards and sought out trench helmets that they all put on. When the strap was fastened under her chin, Ruth almost laughed aloud. What would Helen and Jenny say if they could see her in this brand of millinery? She controlled her laughter, however. Here at the first cross trench stood a sentry who let them by when the ghostly leader of the trio, whose face she could not see at all, had whispered the password. Ruth walked between her two companions, and her dress was not noticed in the dark. Soon they were out at the tunnels, through the ridge. Later she learned that the ridge was honeycombed with them. The trench they entered was broader and open to the sky, and muddy. She stepped once off the duck boards, laid down in the middle of the passageway, and dipped halfway to her knee in the mire. She felt that if the Major had not pulled her up quickly, she might have sunk completely out of sight. But she did not utter a sound. He whispered in her ear, "I admire your courage, mademoiselle. Just a short distance farther. Do not lose heart." "I'm just beginning to feel brave," she whispered in return. Presently the leader stopped. They waited a moment while he fumbled along the boarded side of the trench. Then a plank slid back. It was the door of a dugout. "This way, Major," the man said in French. The Major pushed Ruth through the narrow opening. The plank door was closed. It was a vile-smelling place. A match was scratched. A tiny flame sprang up, and then there flared a candle, one of those trench candles made of rolled newspapers and paraffin. It illumined the dugout faintly. There were bunks along the walls, and in the middle of the planked cave was a rustic table and 2 benches. Evidently the men who sometimes occupied this trench had spent their idle hours here. But to Ruth Fielding it seemed a fearful place in which to sleep and eat and loaf away the long hours of trench duty. "All ready for us, Trep?" asked Major Marchand of the man who had led them to this spot. The American girl now saw that the man was a squat Frenchman in the horizon-blue uniform of the infantry and with the bars of a sergeant. He was evidently one of the French officers assigned to teach the Americans in the trenches. In his own tongue the man replied to his superior. He drew from one of the empty bunks 2 bulky bundles. The Major shook them out, and they proved to be 2 suits of rubber overalls and boots together, a garment to be drawn on from the feet, and fastened with buckled straps over the shoulders. They enclosed the whole body to the armpits in a waterproof garment. "A complete disguise for you, mademoiselle, with the helmet," Major Marchand suggested, "and a protection from the water." "The water?" gasped Ruth. "We have half a mile of morass to cover after we get out of the trenches," was the reply. "I am unable to carry you over that pick-a-back. You'll have to wait, mademoiselle." End of chapter 21.